Hey everyone, so in my last video I mentioned Vim marks, but I didn't go into much details. And I think this deserves its own video because it's such an awesome feature in NeoVim, and I think other editors also have something very similar to it. So Vim marks are essentially bookmarks that you can set and use within the buffer you're in or across multiple files. You can set it and then jump or quickly jump back to it whenever you need to. Alright, to start, let's open up NeoVim and open up a file to use as a demo for this. And let's just jump here, okay? So to set a mark, all you have to do is just press M and then use a character as kind of your bookmark you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use the character A. So now I have a bookmark, A, that is essentially saving this position here of the opening of the curly bracket, okay? We have a bookmark, but now how do we go back to this? And how do we tell that what bookmarks do we have in our editor here? So if I open up here and say marks, this will list all the different marks I have in my buffer. And notice that A is already here, right? This guy here, because we did set it here. So it already kind of stored it for us, all right? So if I want to jump back to it, let's go down a little bit. And then there's two ways you can jump back to that bookmark. So the first one is using the backtick, and the next one is using, or the second one is using the single quote. If we use the single quote, which is this thing here, and then press A, it takes us all the way back to the bookmark, but it takes us to the beginning of the line where there's no empty space, essentially. Where if we use the backtick, like this, and then press A, it takes us to the specific location where we set the bookmark. So in this case, it will be the opening bracket. Okay, so you set the mark using M and then the character you want, lowercase in this case, if you're within the same buffer. And to jump back to it, you can use backtick or single quote. Backtick will take you to the specific location, both column and line, where single quote will take you to the beginning of the line. All right, so before I continue, let me mention a couple things. So here you see that I have this character A. So this is not the default behavior in NeoVim. You shouldn't be able to see this. But I do have some plugins that I'm using, which is like adding these things for me. It just helps to remember where the bookmarks are. All right. So here, if I open up marks, you should be able to see all the marks that you have, right? But notice as well, if I press like single column or single quote, you see the list of the marks. And more than that, if I press like leader S and M, that shows me the list of all the marks I have in my instance here. So the way this is working is I have two plugins installed. So which key will show me essentially these ones. And I have snacks, which has a lot of features, but one of them is marks. So it has a way to kind of search the different marks you have in your system. That's how I'm able to see and kind of quickly jump back and forth here. So I think also like snacks is the one adding the mark here. All right. So Vim marks has multiple types that works within kind of different scopes. The one we've been looking at here is the first one, which is the lowercase marks. There's also the uppercase marks, there's the numbered marks, and the non-alpha numeric marks, essentially. So the first one here, which is the lowercase marks, this works within the buffer you're in. So within the open buffer. So like in this case, I have which key open, that's the buffer I'm in. Those marks are within this specific buffer. If I go to a different file, let's say, this one here, and if I list up our marks, notice that we don't have any like A in here because we're in a different buffer. Okay. So if we go back here, we type in marks. Now we see the A here back to this buffer, right? So this is the lowercase one. And this is not like persistent. As soon as you kind of close NeoVim, if you're not storing the session, then these things will go away, will disappear, okay? So next, the second type is uppercase marks. And essentially, this is a global mark that you can set. It works across files, and it's persistent. So here, let's say I'm going to set a capital B as a mark in this position here. I'm going to exit NeoVim, and I'm going to go to a completely different project and open up Vim. All right, and just open something. So here, if I press single quote or the backtick, both will work the same way. Notice that capital B is already here. okay, which means my mark is still available, accessible in a different project. And if I press capital B, I jump right to the NeoVim configuration. This would be super useful if you have like two separate projects, you have to jump back and forth, or you have like special files that you just want to visit every now and then. For example, your NeoVim configuration. That's how the uppercase marks work. And so usually you would use this for visiting very special files, very special configuration files, things like that. Next, we have the numbered marks, and these are global. They're set automatically by Vim or NeoVim, and they're from 0 to 9. So you have 10 of them. And these are essentially the position of the cursor when you last exited NeoVim. Let me show you a quick demo. So here I'm on this line, okay? I'm gonna exit NeoVim, go back and open up the same file. And I'm gonna go to, let's say here, I'm gonna exit NeoVim, open and go back. If I open this single quote here and I press 0, that is the last line I was in before I exited NeoVim. If I use this and then 1, it takes me to this line. So it just remembers the last time, the last position you were in, and then stores it for you. Next, we have the special marks or the non-alphanumeric marks. These are also set automatically by NeoVim, but they're also based on actions. So here, if I press single column or single quote twice, I'm able to toggle between essentially the last jump and go back and forth. I'm able to toggle between those two positions. This works with the backtick or the single quote. Next, we have the dot. So if I press single quote and then dot, dot takes me to the last place I made a change. So let's go to line number 15 and say changed and then go back down here. If I, let's just go here and then press single quote and then dot, this takes me to the line that I made the last change in. And if I press backtick and dot, this takes me to the exact position. So this would be super useful if you're like writing documentation or something, you go somewhere else, you want to go specifically back to that position and continue writing something, that would be super useful to use. Next, we have the open and close brackets. These are the start and end of the last change or yank text. So let's go here and let me yank these. Okay, so we have these 3 lines copied. If I press single quote and then open bracket, it takes me to the first kind of line where I yanked this. And then the closing one will take me to the last one. That's how this one works. Next, we have these ones. I don't know what they're called, but essentially, if I do a select here, visual select, and exit this one, if I press single quote and then less than, or single quote or greater than, this will jump similar to the open and close of brackets, but they essentially work with visual selection. And next we have double quotes. So if I go, say here, to plugins, and if I exit, let me say first, if I exit and go back in, if I press single quote and then double quote, essentially this takes you to the position when the buffer was last exited. It's kind of similar to the 0 one, but there's like a little bit of context differences. It works specifically within this buffer. Next, we have caret. And so essentially, this is a position of the insertion point when insert mode was last ended. So to demo it, let me just say whatever, ABC here and exit, then go down. Now if I press backtick and then caret, it takes me to the last place where I did any kind of editing. I wrote something. So the last place where you exited insertion mode. That's how this one works. Okay, so the last part is I want to show you how to manage these things, how to manage different marks. As you can see already, I can type in marks here, and this will list up essentially all the marks that you have within your kind of editor. Next would be listing a specific mark. So we know we have a lowercase a as a mark here. If I press in marks, and then a, that would list that specific mark for you. And then because I have snacks and I have which key, if I press, for example, single quote, this will list all the marks I have and I can see them visually in front of me like this. And also you can use snacks and then that would show you kind of a search thing for all the different marks that you have. Next, if you want to delete marks, you can type in del and then marks, and then you can say the specific mark you want to remove. So, for example, A, and then that would remove the mark A. Or you can do something like delete marks and then have like a range. For example, A, B, C, etc. if you have multiple marks. And if you want to remove all marks, you can do something like this and then exclamation mark. This would remove all the marks. Notice that this removed A, but it did not remove the capital B. So this only works with the lowercase marks. Capital B ones cannot be removed this way. And so to remove the capital B, you can say del marks and then just say capital B. That would remove it. So you can't, if you remove everything, that won't remove the capital ones or obviously the numbered ones, but will only remove the lowercase. So if you want to remove a capital mark, you have to kind of target it specifically. All right, so for this last part, I want to show you some of the practical use cases of how I use Vim marks. Hopefully it gives you some ideas and inspires you to use it more. So let me open up this Go project, and here I have, a very simple code here. Say I want to look into the implementation of process any. You can do something like Control O and go back and forth. However, if I know I'm gonna kind of go deeper into like some sort of a library or whatever, something outside of this project, what I end up doing is I set a mark, a uppercase one. I go here, then I go here. Let's say I'm gonna go in this function, and now I'm in like a whole different project. But I want to jump right back to where I started. I have a uppercase mark, so I can just press in single quote and then capital A, and I'm back to where I started, and I can continue working. That's how I use this, and this is mainly useful like whenever I'm, let's say, in this project, and I know I'm gonna end up reading some like the library code or something like that, or a package code. That's how I end up using this one. This is very useful for me, especially with like the uppercase one, because you just have to leave the project and go to a package and then come back. This is super quick. Now you can also search the buffers you have open here, because when you go to a different place, the buffer will be stored. But I just want to go back quickly, and that's how I use it. The next step here, or the next practical case, is when I'm reviewing code. So say this is like a APR, I downloaded it, I'm going to review the code, and I'm reading it, and I know there's like 3 or 4 different places where I want to get back to and work on. So let's say this function. I would set like a mark here, and then go here, set another mark, and let's just say here. And now I have bookmarks for the different positions that I want to review. And I can just say, for example, leader SM, and I have them here, right? So I can jump right away there, or even use this one and say A, I want to start reviewing this code, and then B, and essentially just go over them one by one. That's another way I use this. All right, so that's everything I wanted to share about this. Hopefully you've learned something useful in this video, and I will see you in the next one.